Huh? Okay, close. Turn them on.
They dropped the real this thing. Yes, I'll check it. Yeah, it's there.
Oh,
girl, I'm going to school. Yes. What time do you have class?
Oh, it's just starting. Papa. 91%. Hey, 107. 130.
you want to follow back there, so you're going to.
I'm the first person to
It's our
join.
problem.
Hello, everyone. So we'll start the lecture very soon. So let's start the meeting now. So the lecture. So we'll go straight to what we have. So I will be taking the last part of it, which basically is the programming part of the lecture. So we'll be going through the concepts of programming and then be able to know what we need to know about the programming aspect. So for some of us have already gotten the logbook, so we should fill some part of the logbook and then be able to. So this is the purely programming part of it. So let's proceed now and then be able to have what we can do. So I will quickly introduce myself, then we pick off from there. Okay, so we'll want to quickly look at the course. So I've said, so we're looking at Visual Basic as a programming language. So we want to look at the concept of programming language that we need to know. So this is basically what we're going to learn and looked at in the course of our study. So we're looking at understand the concept of programming, identify the importance of programming, and all of that. So we'll be going through all of this. And I also believe that some have joined the YouTube channel. Just with my name, you'll be able to get there. So I'm able to send the link to the YouTube channel so that all of us will be able to join. Able to join. So you can inform, the governors can inform those who for those who don't, so I've sent the YouTube channel. So for those who couldn't get in, so can tell them to join there. So okay, so let's quickly move ahead now. So these are the things we want to know. We want to see the concept of programming language. So we'll be using Visual Basic, which is purely event-driven programming language, to be able to see some concepts about programming language. So let's take many of time students used to put all of these terms in a wrong way. So first is, what is a program? A program is a sequence of instruction to solve a particular problem or to perform a specific task with the computer. The essence of program writing is to solve a problem. You are not writing code or you're not doing anything just because you want to have fun. Yes, programming can be an art as you develop yourself to a point whereby writing code and all of that becomes fun. But the actual truth about programming or program is that they are written to solve problems. And there's no way you can solve a problem you don't understand. So the first key point is that, what is the problem am I trying to solve? Do I have a clear understanding of it? Then what is programming? the process or activity of writing that program. The process or activity of writing that program for that program. So a program is written by using programming language like Java, C++, Visual Basic, C Sharps, and all of that. Then a programmer is the person that writes the program or code. In general, when we solve a computing problem, we are talking about one, the input, processing, and the output. So this is so you get an input, you process the input, and you get an output. So this is basically all about writing program or about program. So what are my basic inputs? How do I want to process the input? So is the way I want to process the input that will give the output. So that's why they used to use these slogans that garbage in, garbage out. It's what you input into the system that the system will process. There are some programs you have written to tell the system that, look, this input that is coming in, use this to process them and give me an output. So this is a classic view of computer programming, computation as calculation. So we looked at the earlier steps. We have the UDIE to be able to look at what this acronym is all about in trying to solve computational problem or computing problem. So problem solving, that is another area. You must develop a skill and ability to solve problems. Process of defining a problem. Number one, defining a problem. And you cannot define a problem you don't have an understanding of. Searching for relevant information and resources about the problem, that is also key. And of discovering, designing, evaluating the solution for further. So this is all about problem solving. Your ability to define a problem, search for relevant information and resources about the problem. Because as a programmer or as somebody who writes program or as somebody who is involved in the process of profiling a solution to a particular problem, you must be able to have a clear understanding of the problem. Most of the time, we have what is called collaborative research now, whereby people from different areas, like this course being offered by several people from different disciplines. You might ask, this programming aspect of it, why will I be interested, or what will I gain from it? What part of what you can gain from it is your ability to understand the process of producing a software, the process of getting this thing done, so that should in case in your domain area there is a problem that can be solved computationally, you can collaborate with the person. Since you have a clear understanding of some of these things, it is easier for you to say, okay, fine, I can make, the input should be this, should be that, should be this. Then maybe the programmer tried to write the code to do some of these things. Yes, hold on. see it now, so that so once you can collaborate with whichever programmer that comes around, so you have an idea of what it is. So let's look at those 4 steps of the polymer steps. So the number one thing is that we'll have the U, which is what? Understanding the problem. You must understand the problem. So after understanding the problem, what next? Devise a plan to solve the problem. This is where your algorithm, your analysis, breaking down the problem if it's complex into several subsections. And after that, you come to what? Implementing the plan. Implementing the plan is where purely the programmer comes in. The programmer is able to come in, see what algorithm, what flow chart has been designed, and is able to implement it in any programming language of the choice, and then comes up. So finally, is evaluating the solution. You must evaluate, and this is where the issue about testing and debugging comes in. You test it with some data to be sure before you deploy it, everything is fine. Then you talk about maintenance and all of that. So this is basically that. Now, is programming for a specific kind of people, computer science, engineering? The answer is capital no. With the advent of AI, with practically everything that is being done now as elements of computing. So you just have to know that anybody can move into programming, irrespective of it. Just develop the skill, have a clear understanding of it, and you are able to work on some certain things, then you can begin to get into programming. So programmers are widely recognized and one of the best paid. This is just a fact. So underneath, you could see examples of those who went into programming, or let me put it this world computing area, and their network. So we have Big Guild and all the rest. So let's look at application area. Where can we apply programming, or where in the past features that programming have been applied to? So we'll look at one, ATM. Okay, so someone raise up your hands. See, hand is up. So you can type your questions in the chat, so that's, or is it mistakenly you raised up your hand? So someone have raised up his hand, so I need to know who it is and what. Okay, so let's continue. Let's continue. So we have in terms of ATM. So you might not really understand the problem ATM really solved, except for those who have been around for a while, who probably knew the problem that ATM actually solved. Because ATM solved the problem of people queuing up in the bank, trying to catch even little money, and most especially when it is time for salary and all of that, for you to get things done in the bank was becoming difficult. Get there in the morning, you have to queue, they have to give you a number and all of that. We just discovered that all of these is that people are queuing up to meet. Why not us automate a teller machine, a machine that acts like the teller? That is what brought about ATM machines. So we have banking app, a lot of banking app applications. Like even before now, we have the issue. I'm trying to relate all of these to the problem that programming have solved within this area. Also, for some of us, for those who are older parents or parents and all of that, the issue about banking was a big problem in the sense that it was not online. In those days, if I happens to have my account registered or open an account in a particular branch, every transaction must be in that. It's not like I open a branch in Surulere and I can collect money in Maiduguri or even outside the country. No, you have to go back. So the problem is that if I open banking and I have to travel, then I have to reopen, I have to pick up the money, go to open it. So all of this we're able to solve by online application that you can do anything you want to do online. So we have a commercial, we have operating system, because all your operating system are programs written by people or written by programs. We have the mobile application, so we have the BT cursor, whereby programming comes like your handset and all the applications you have there are built by programmer. These are application area of programming. So we have the robots, we have the game application, and the internet. So we truly have everything with programming. And programming keep moving. Like this is the advent of AI. There's nothing AI cannot do now. Programming has moved to the point whereby we are now looking at AI. Now looking at everything. I mean everything, virtually everything can be done with AI. So this is crucial, and this is important that we know that everything can actually be done with AI. So let's look at, after we've been able to look at the key issues, which is programming, being able to solve problems, look at how we can go about it, and then we want to take one of the oldest about event-driven programming language, which is BASIC. We want to look at BASIC. We want to look at what is BASIC all about, and then we will do one or two things using Visual Basic. Visual Basic is purely a procedural programming language that breaks the problem into modules and creates modules for the problem, and it by solving each of those modules and then bringing them together to form the final solution. So the word BASIC is an acronym for Beginner All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. And it came as an answer to the more complicated language like Fortran, Argo, and Cobol, which is more of a bit scientific, let me put it that way, because Fortran is a formula translation. So some of these things were built based on some of the complex mathematical calculations and all of that, in using them to solve a problem. So people were having it a little bit difficult. So someone came, can I have, instead of all of these issues of having this form of complication in working with the program, can I come with an easier way for the end user to have access to a programming language that they can easily work with? So that is what brought about the Visual Basic. So I started with BASIC from the QW, GW, QW, Quick Basic. This is just like how the origin. But now we have several things. We even have the concept of object-oriented introduced into it and all of that. But BASIC definitely wasn't built with an object-oriented from scratch. So this is a typical illustration about Visual Basic. It's a tool that allows you to develop Windows, which is what use a graphical users interface application. What this is saying is that there are other programming languages like we saw. They might not have the users, the graphical users interface properly put, because this is purely an event-driven. I'll explain as we move on what we mean by event-driven, because Windows, like even for your OS, for your operating system, we have more than one operating system. We have the Windows, we have the Macintosh, we have the Unix, we have several variants of Unix like Linux, Ubuntu, Red Hat, and all of that. But the window is more of an event kind of a thing, whereby the program is written for you. All the end user does is to click and trigger an event. So VB has two major components: the control and the command. A control is a graphical object such as these. So we'll look at all of these, and then we have the buffing, which is purely. Then the command, on the other hand, is an instruction that, when issued by the users, cause VB2. So we have your control. Place your control all over the places. But the controls will not do anything in Visual Basic. It's just like empty things you have done. It's the command, which are the code written under those buffing, those control, that will make them trigger an event. Visual Basics is event-driven, meaning code remains idle until called upon to respond to some event by clicking the button, menu, and all of that. Visual Basic is governed by event processor. An event is an action organized by an object for which one can write code to respond. That is what we are talking about. We'll look at some of these. I think when we looked at a bit of maybe one of the lectures to just look at how practically these things work. So this is a typical interface. The user's interface, all of this can be generated in terms of looking at the event driven. So what we are saying is that these are control. And this control, once you try to press or to click any of them, they trigger an event. And they cannot trigger events if nothing is written underneath that those events will be able to be triggered by those codes to perform whatever is written underneath. Nothing happens till an event is detected. Once an event is detected, the code corresponding to that event is executed. That is the key thing. Once it is triggered, it goes down. So it does it, and then it responds to whatever thing. So these are various versions of Visual Basics, from the first aspect of it in 1991 down to the present VB.NET, and all of that. That we've moved away from Visual Basic to VB.NET. Other basic things have been added to it, and we'll be to look at. So these are just the various versions, and then the evolution of Visual Basic. So this is a typical interface of VB6. So for this course, we'll be looking at VB6, and also I'll be looking at any of the revised or the updated version like VB.NET, looking at any of the Visual Studio that have this. But this is a typical here of VB6. VB6 is the oldest, more updated version of the Visual Basic. But later on, we have the VB.NET where we have some of those applications. So this is the clear interface, the VB application interface. So I will explain all of this interface, all of this interface, all of this interface. I will have a clue on how it works. So let's move. This is just the application structure. You can have Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, and the modules. So each of these can be linked. Each of these can be designed. So if you see here, We have control 1, control 2, control 3, all of that. We have form 1, form 2, and then we have the modules where you can write a modular program to effect some other things apart from just creating the form and clicking the end within the form. So this is all the things we need to know from that interface. So while the form is just like what we will see later on, the form is a window that creates for user's interface. Everything is placed on the form. Everything you have is placed on the form. All your controls are placed there. The form is just like a container that is used, like a window that is used to be able to prepare everything. So we have that so those are the things that we have. Excuse me. All right, so let's move on. So I believe most of us, and I think we also have to attend to that because it's has to do with those having issue with the link. So please let's join. Let's most people join the link. So if you have people around, please. So let's move on. So this whole thing here that we have here are basically what we'll be dealing with. So I will explain. I've shown you the interface. That interface I showed earlier on has all of this. It's made up of all of this. One, the form I've explained. And the next thing is the control. The control are the graphical features drawn on the form. Whatever you're going to draw on the form to be able to create the application. So we have the form, and after the form, we have the control. Example of such control is the text box, label, strobe bar, command button, and exit. Then another thing you will see is called the property. Each of those form and control have a property. Property means that how I want the form to look, how I want the display in terms of the color of the text, like for the form, the background, and all of that. So this is very crucial. This is very important that you know that each of these, including the form, has a property. And the more you adjust the property, the more it's reflected on the so-called control. Here we have the method. Using procedure that can be invoked to impart some action to it. So we have the methods, we have some inbuilt procedures that are there. Then we have the event procedure, code related to some of this is the code that says when a certain event occurs. So we looked at the issues of code under several of these. So the general procedure code not related to object, the code must be invoked by the application. Then we have the modules. The modules are collection of the general procedure, variable declaration, and all of that. So to develop a typical application, what are the steps involved? What are the steps involved? Well, say there are three basic steps that we can look. One is that draw the interface. So if you want to draw the interface, even before you start putting your interface probably on the system and using the Visual Basic to draw them, you can have a sketch of it somewhere and say, okay, I want it to look like this. So from that sketch, you can now begin to use the visual programming to implement that. Then assign property to control, you check, then attach code to the control. So this is a simple way in developing a Visual Basic application. So let's move to each of the steps. So drawing the user's interface and setting property, that is the first key thing. So you design mode, the run mode, and the break mode. So to operate a typical Visual Basics, you have these three. You have the design mode. The design mode is when you click on your form, the form comes up. At that point, you have design mode. You place all the forms, check all the property, you keep building. Then there's another mode when you run whatever you have designed, whatever you have programmed. That is design mode. Then you have the debugging mode, which is the break mode. It's okay, fine. I want to check and debug each of those things. So the major thing for this course is to basically look at the area of the design mode. How do we design? Then we'll run. Then if time comes, you can just take a typical example of the debugger the break mode to see. So let's start with the main window. This is the main window. What is on top? Now, the main window consists of one, the title bar, the menu bar, and the toolbar. So the title bar indicates the project name. You could see this on top. See project 1, Microsoft Visual Basic Design. Then indicate that. Then the menu bar has the drop down. So all of this, the next thing are all the menu bar. As a drop down menu from which you control, then you have what is now the top thing, which is the toolbar, as button that provides shortcut to some of the menu applications. So these three are key things. So we have the three main windows in the Visual Basics are the title bar, menu bar, and the toolbar. And this is what we have. When we will work on a typical Practica, we'll be able to do that. So let's start with a typical window. The form window is essential to developing Visual Basic application. This is where you draw your application. All right, someone raise up your hands. Could you please type whatever you have? I have to mute everybody so that it will be easier for us. Many joined and the noise in background. So if you have anything, could you please type it so that if there is need for me to pause to look at it, I will quickly do that. Because some of you are raising up your hands and then. All right, so let's do that. Let me see. Someone saying I should go back to the. So let me go back. Okay, this is it. This is the main. So what exactly is your question? So this is the main window. What exactly is your question on the main window? So that this is the main windows, and the main window, I've said, has the three basic elements, and those elements are what I've described, which are what the title bar, menu bar, and toolbar. So any question on that, so that I will pause to ask questions after a while. Then we can all we'll take. So if you have a question, just put it down. So I will unmute everybody so that you can have your questions. But I want to get the lecture to a point so that we don't have too many distractions, most especially since we are also streaming the class. So this is the menu. So talked about, and then we've been able to tell you some of the things, most especially on the toolbar. So this is the form. The form is essential to developing Visual Basic Application. It is where you draw your application. So the first thing is the form. The first thing is the form. So you have the form this way, and then everything you want to design is purely and basically on the form. So this is a typical. So what you do is that you could just go create a form. So once you create a form, the form appears. You can create as many forms. And along the line, we'll talk about linking the form to each other. So but let's create the form. Once you create the form, which is the first thing, then the next thing is the toolbar. Some of these toolbar, you saw them at the last layer there, but we have a comprehensive toolbar by the side, so which you can let it be visible when you run your Visual Basic application. So these are more or less the control that you use in your application. Each of them. We have the first one by my outermost left is the pointer. We have the label, the frame, the checkbox, the picture box. These are the things you place on the form. And once you have placed them on the form, once there is no command on what those forms will do, the forms will just be ordinary form, and there will not be any event that will be triggered. They will just be there. Once you run them, they will run, but they won't be doing anything because there is no command, there is no code to tell them if I click on this, or if this form run, this should come up, it should not come up, and all of that. So all of this can be placed on the form. Once you place them on the form without a command, you remember we said something earlier on that for you to properly get a typical Visual Basics, there must be the issue of the control and the command. The control, where you get your form, place all of this on them. The command is the code that will trigger. Once an event is clicked, what will trigger the event to perform certain tasks at the command. Now, the property. Each of those control and the form have their property. So what this means is that this property you can see here is worth enables one to change and to work with the control and the form. And we have several properties. For example, the name. The name is form one. You can change the name. And once you change the name, it's whatever you have there you will use to program, most especially when it comes to the name. Because there are moments you want to refer to this form. If you want to refer to this form, you must use the name. But in this case, one major thing is the caption. What appears in the form as a capture of the form. So number one is that the fourth one is called form one. You can change this from one to whatever application, whatever thing you want to do. So you could see all of our things. Enable, is it true? The color, the background color, the text color, the border style. All at once you are making anything is being reflected on the control of the form. So the property window is used to establish initial property value or object. Object means those control as seen as object. Drop down box at the top of the window list all the objects in the current form. This, when you click on the property or when you are at the property of each of those things, those first things are called the default setting. Default setting means that this is how this thing comes. If you want to customize it, you now begin to change some of those properties to whatever you want to customize them into. So this is a typical layout. The form layout shows where the form will be executed and some of all of that. So the next thing is the project window. The project window will tell you the name of the project and every other thing, like the numbers of form you have. Maybe you need you have images. You can create all folders for your images inside the project. Because everything you need is good for those in computer science or for those in engineering or for those who will be purely going into proper programming. It is better that when you create a project, create a folder that everything concerning that project is in that folder. So don't have them scattered, because if you have them scattered, it will be difficult to have a path trace. But if they are within the same folder, it is easier to make reference to them, and it's easier for them to be seen and apply to whatever project, whatever thing you are doing. So how do you add those control into your form? You can either double click the tools you want to use. If it's a text box, once you double click it, it immediately appears on the form. That's one. Once you double, then once it's in the form, it comes into the form in a default size. What you need to do is to try as much as possible to resize it if the default size that is displayed when you double click it is not the size you want. Then the other way is to click the tool and then move, like you're just dragging it, placing it where you want it to be, and then you can now begin to place them as you want around your form. To move a control, you have to click the object in the form window and drag it to wherever location. Also resize, to just pick them and resize them once they are in focus. This is the classwork based on what we have been able to look at. So this should be one of the things we should be able to look at, and looked at a typical example of all of what we've been looking at. So I will ask at this junction, I'll pause and ask some questions, so that if you have questions I will try to unmute everybody and then ask people to ask their questions. Then I will try and see if I can just create a sample of what we are looking at. So if you have any question, you can raise up your hand and then you can write your questions and let me see. Let me unmute so that we can participate. Okay, so now if anyone wants to talk, you can be allowed to talk now. Just raise up your hand. I'll call you. Then we'll be able to make your contribution. So you can ask your questions now. And again, I think I have, you can ask your questions. Then for your continuous assessment, you know, the logbook is there. You are meant to fill the logbook. And then very soon, a date will be given for submission. A date and the modality of the submission will definitely be given to each course rep. Should please try to get in touch with the course lecturers, any of us, so that we can have, you can have, because how and the modality of submission, because basically it will be much better for all course rep to gather all of those once the date for final submission, so that you quickly pick up, because there are a lot of each of those sessions you have been taught. Each of them have their session, so that because I know one problem with students is that once they put deadline, that's when they start rushing, because each of them have their practical parts that you need to answer from the first day up to the programming aspect we are dealing with now. So please try to get and put them down, because once the deadline is given, it's not when you start saying, oh, I didn't. So all governors, please, I will begin to put it across to start asking each of their colleagues to start preparing. In a week time, we can say, or in just 1.5 weeks, because exam is close, so we need to start grading those things. So you'll be given when to submit, when. So any questions before we proceed?
Good morning, sir. Sir, are we answering everything?
You said?
Are we answering everything?
Yes, that's why you have to have picked it up while
sir.
Why? Because each of those sessions have its own practical.
Okay.
But each of them, if you look at the practical, each of those sessions, you ought to have been just like, instead of having all of these things in paper, printing, and all of that. So you have the workbook at each of those things. So I'd expected by now, as I'm finishing, probably next week, if we can finish up whatever we have, you'll be given a deadline. It's just because I have to take my part, give what the programming aspect have to, and how you have to do it. Then from next week, I think there will be a deadline to tell you when to submit. So by now, the first lecture, you should have find solution to it. The second person that took you and ended his own last week will have. The mind is just to say, okay, this is how the programming runs. This is what you need. This is how you go about it. By now, Seth, I believe if by next week, as you see people asking if they are having 1 or 2 challenges after this class time, because after this class, I believe you should be able to do a typical design. So I should be expecting people to say, okay, look, this part of the aspect of the programming aspect, how do we go about? Okay, do it this way, then print out in case if you cannot write the code fully, or the whole thing, do this. So by now, you should have been able to get your practical manual with you so that each of those sessions, you are already doing it. Once the lecturer finishes part, there is a practical thing there for you to. Not when it's just, okay, you are meant to submit. The essence of the practical is just like, as you're done, check, oh, do it. So like, but at the end of it, meant to submit for grading. I hope that is clear.
Yes, sir.
Because I can find many not really taking this aspect until the deadline. So we have, is it Idowu? Your hand is up, so.
Yes, sir. Sir, please, I have a question.
Go ahead. That's why I open up now for time for questions.
Okay, sir. Sir, please, about the manual book.
Okay.
So please, there are some of us just like me. Like, I have a very big handwriting, and there are places that they ask us to discuss. So what can you say about
summarize the issues? I feel to be honest, just summarize is the key point they are needing.
Okay, sir.
Is the key point. So just summarize. For example, yes, just summarize and put the key point.
Okay, sir. Okay.
That's
sir.
part of why the practical aspect and all of that. That's why we have not only the program. So the why I'm practically taking the last is to tell you the programming part and how to undo a practical manual.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Well, why I'm saying this, because I know students come to the department, come to the office, and that is the essence of the manual. The manual is not just a fancy that, okay, no, it's for you to have finished the particular session, go to the manual. There are exercises there. Solve them and put them there. Pick each of them. So, like the question I'm asking, if most people have it, oh, sir, with what you've said, what do I do on this? Okay, this is it. This is it. So that towards the tail end, you don't have to rush when they're asking you to submit. It's very important. It's very because in a week's time, the class will be over. Then you have deadline. Okay, I can see Israel, and is up. Israel.
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to ask if the Visual Basic app can be used on phone, or is it only on laptops?
Okay, sir. Now that's your question. You can use a lighter one, which is also based. Are you getting me? But if you are going to use the scale, it will be it will be too much for your phone, for the kind of phone. You know, there's some phone that have the processor and everything can run through something. And there's some phone, in fact, you can't even upload, you can't even download to install them. Like the Visual Studio, you know, it has a lot of fonts. But if it's just normal VS Studio or command-based things, like if it is purely console-based means that you are not doing all of those front, all of those things window type. You're only just putting them in command and it's been executed. Yes, you could have some application that will run that easily for you. But if you are looking at the event-driven, the window type, it might be too heavy to run on any phone. I hope that is clear.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
So that's why you might have. But if it's console based, where you just put this and all of that, you could have some lighter version of BB that can be deployed on phone. Any question? Any other question now? All right. So let me see. I want to quickly see if I can do something before we move to the next. The next aspect is the command. Let me see. Okay, hold on. Just few minutes. Just give me everybody's system. So I want to see if I can run a typical VB to just display this aspect of it, and then we can move on. thought of something, so that we can just move on, and then so what I will do, let's keep this. Think I will start with the practical aspect, so that we can move forward, since it's likely by next week we should be almost done. So let's move. So take note of this. Take note of this. This will be the first thing we will do. I will use to explain a simple log form. We'll do that. But once you design, what I want to display here was to display what we have, and then tell you about the control and the command. So we will design something without the command, and you find out that we're trying to click up something is not going to. So how do we go about the command after we have created design? That is when after creating a design, where and how do we place command on them? So, and for you to do that, you must have what is called the basic concept of programming, because you now want to write a program and place underneath some of those controls to trigger an event. So the next point we're going to is to be trying to say, or is to just try to look at programming a bit. Programming in it. So all of this we would work on and then try to. So let's so fundamental feature of Visual Basic we must know, because this is what will help us. So we have the keyword, we have the constant and variable, the data type, data declaration, operators, expression, assignment, input statement, output statement, program comments, then function. Well, we might not go deep into function, but I will just explain what function. It's because we are not purely looking at programming per se. For those in computer science or in engineering or in any other field that have to, that's when we'll now be looking at core things, because fundamental of a programming goes beyond this. Apart from all of this, you still have a function. In some object-oriented, it is called method. We still have array. In a functional procedural programming language, we still have the pointer. We still have string manipulation. Here, what we did not put, which is key, which we are going to still look at, is called the control structure. Because programming is about making decisions. For me to make decision, I need to pick two options and know which options, and that's where we deal with the control structure. So let's take a typical aspect of the keywords. What are keywords? A keyword is a word or phrase that is exclusively reserved or kept for special use by Visual Basic. What we are saying is that these keywords cannot be used for any other thing apart from their predefined meaning. You know, like I've said, this thing is used to declare variable. You cannot, it's used when you are declaring variable only. You can't use them for any other thing. So that they have a predefined reserved meaning. So that when you come to variable, you can't use them for any other thing except what they are meant for and how they have been structured to be used. That's why people make mistakes. You use keywords for variables. To use what keywords? You can't use keywords for variables. So a typical example of some of those keywords is dim, sub, when, for, if, single, double, long, variant, state, and so on. To have it at the back of your mind, and you know, some of us always take note of, maybe if I ask, for example, in an objective question, which of the following are valid variables? I mean, put in several things. And at long run, if you have some of this, you might think, if you don't have an idea that keywords cannot be used as variable. So another thing we need to know is a constant. A constant is a numeric or string value that does not change in your program. What this means? When we get to variable, you will understand why it is called a variable. What we are saying is that when you declare any storage location as a constant, that means throughout the execution of anything you do with that storage location, the value remains the same. The value does not change. Either the value can be a numeric value or it can be a string value. So this is a typical way to define. So you just have the keyword const pi equals to 3 point. This is just our normal pi that we normally use in our calculation. So once this is defined, this particular pi throughout the program value can never change. If you try to change the value to give you a syntax, it will give you an error, telling you that this is a constant and must remain the same throughout. So you can define that constant to be written if all, so we have it can be a global constant file and all of that. This is just within a general declaration area of a module. So this global constant and all of that, this when you're dealing with modules, looking at issues of global and local variable, making your constant not just a local variable within a module to make it a global apart from where you are. So now let's go to, we've talked about keywords, which is the same thing as reserved words. We've looked at constant, and let's now look at variables, because you'll be declaring variables a lot. So what is this variable? A variable is a location or area in computer memory where data is stored. The name given to that location in the programming is what is meant by variable name. And that variable name, you use an identifier for that. Why is it called variable? Like the name says, is because the value of that storage location changes with time. It might be 2 today, or it might be 2. An operation might happen to make it 4. An operation might happen again to make it 1. So the value there keep changing. Unlike constant. Your pi is constant and you will use your pi throughout. So this is key and fundamental for you to know the difference between a constant and a variable. And this is applicable not only to Visual Basic, but all other programs. But since our major focus is on Visual Basic, that's why we are looking at it. So let's move on. These are rules that you must use in naming your variable. The first character must be a letter. They may include letter, number, underscore only. You cannot use a reserved word we've talked about, and not more than 255 characters. So example of valid variable are what? Like this tax rate, tax underscore rate, tax PQ, CSC. These are. For example, you've seen the rule that it must start with a letter. You must not use a reserved word. Then it must come followed by letter, number, and all of that. It must not be more than 255 characters. So these are rules. These are things that will help you in naming your variable, in creating an identifier for that variable. So apart from variable, we've just talked about variable here and all of that. The next thing, which is the data type. When you create a variable, from our definition, variable is what? It's a storage location you created and you name that storage location. But the next question is that what type of data, what type of thing is needed to be stored in that variable? that becomes. So I need to declare, I need to create the type of data that must be stored. For example, you have several places that have been named. You have where it is meant for a certain thing. Once that thing is named, okay, this particular location, this particular room is the storeroom. What is kept there is storeroom. If you come up, this particular room is a living room. Imagine you call a place a living room and other things are stored there. That is what we call mismatch. Because you have named this right from the beginning that this particular location is for this purpose. You can't put any other thing apart from that. That is the concept of data type. That once you declare a variable, you also declare the type of data that must be stored in that variable. That is where we come about data type. So for example, in VB, we have integer, long, single, double, string. These are basically data type that are used in VB. So let's look at a typical example of combining the variables and the data type. You have the keyword, which is the reserved word, thing. Then you have the variable name, which is the surname. You have another reserved word, as. Then you now have the data type. So what we are saying here is that you have dim, create a variable storage location called surname, and let it be that that's location you have created. Let it be a string, that nothing apart from string. So if you are putting in number there, it will tell you, no, there's a mismatch. It's not number that should be there. So these are typical way you declare. So what we are saying, so that if time permit next week, and then we're able to, because I looked at the practical aspects, so I'll just display and I will just explain. The first class work, which is a log, which is where we'll start. Then we'll now create command to do one or two things with that. So take note. Then we have this something like label one dot capture equals to surname. Here is that, you know, a label is a control. Once you have the control dot, the next thing it comes up is, you know, we talked about property. So we give you several of that property. Which property do you want to change? Which property do you want to have something like, yes, label dot capture. That capture of that label, let it be equals to surname. And we've created a variable surname and we have placed a name on that surname. So we will look at all of this when we do it. So the practical. You can also do this by creating an input box for it. This input box you are creating is to try as much as possible to create something that will be prompt, will prompt the end user. So once you have something like this, say surname equals to these two lines, this line, surname equals to Abbas, is putting a name. Well, this second one that says surname equals to input box is asking the end users to enter whatever value. But the other one is a constant value. Surname throughout the program will be Abbas, and the capture will always be Abbas. But this second one that says surname equals to input box, enter your surname, that means anybody can use the program. It will keep asking for whoever is using at that moment. Whatever the person entered is now what will be displayed. So maybe also next week when we're looking at some of these things, I'll also, if I have to remember, I'll also do some of these things practically for you to see the difference and all of that. So use the message box, input box. So this is another way for the input and output to be displayed and all of that. So we can use input box for input. We can use message box to output the value. So we still have the input and output, so we can use this to do that because we are looking at event driven. But most of the code, most of the things we'll be dealing with are event driven. But in console, if I just want something to be displayed after an event, is also trigger, and I want the triggering of the event to create another kind of output format. I can use the message box. So a typical example of the message box is this. I said X equals to message box, the message, what do you want? Then look at the number of buttons. And typical example is this, a message box, surname, my surname. So it will first get the surname, then put up a caption or a title that will follow. So let's go to Visual Basic statement and expression. The simplest statement is the assignment statement. When we say an assignment statement, is that we'll be talking about variable. What assignment operator do we use to assign value to our variable or value to constant that it will remain? What is used in most programming language is the equal. So I've said, create a variable location, name it K. Now say K equals to that solid location K. I've said dim K as integer. Dim K as integer. What I've said, create a variable location in your memory, call it K. And whatever is going to be stored in K should be an integer. So I can now go forward and say K equals to 5. That equal is to assign that value. It's an assignment operator to assign value to those variables. For example, the example we have, assign maybe K equals to 5, 5 into where I have said it should create for K. Now, let everybody listen now, and for those who are in the Zoom with us, I want 1 or 2 response from you. If it is right, you can write down. You can write it down. Dim K as integer. An integer is a whole number, an integer is something. Dim K as integer. And I'll come up and say K equals to 3.4. And I ask you, what is the value of K? Dim K is as integer. And I'll say K equals to 3.4. Now ask in the question, what is the value of K? Anybody? Dim K as integer, K equals to 3.4. What is the value of K? Anybody? Who can try to answer that? I just explained how we assign value to a variable. Okay. Jediah?
K is 3.
K is what? 3.
3.
So why is K 3?
Because you said it's an integer. An integer.
So it truncates the other because. Okay. All right. Okay. Let me ask another question. Dim K again. Dim K as string. Dim K as string. Dim K as string. K equals to 4. What is the value of K?
Invalid, sir.
Invalid. Why is it invalid?
Because K is not a letter or word.
It's not a letter because I said it's not a letter or word. Good.
Yes, sir.
Let's go again. Did you see this caption here? Said explorer.capture, this quote on top. You see quote and all of that. I want to set up another one. Listen carefully again. Dim K as a string. Dim K as a string. Dim K as a string. K equals to, in quote, 4. K equals to, we have quotes on top of, and then I put 4 in between the quote. And I ask, what is the value of K?
Sorry, sir, good morning. Please, what is dim? What is dim?
Have you been around for the lecture? Dim is a reserved word that is used to create a variable.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay, yeah. When I say dim, then K is the variable name. As is the data type. And now says dim creates a variable name called A as a string. And I will say K equals to, know the assignment statement, K equals to, in quote, 4. And that's what is the value of K?
K is equal to 4.
Why is K equals to 4? That's the issue.
Because you're just...
number.
Okay, yes. Okay. You're just using dim to declare K.
Yes, I use dim to declare K as a string. And
okay,
I
as a string.
K. Yes, as a string. And I say K equals to, in quotes, and I put 4 in between those.
4.
Yes. And I say, what is the value of K?
Okay, K has no value because it's a string, not an integer.
Okay. All right. Any other? Bakari, any other?
Sir, K is equal to 4. Because
why is K 4?
It is in code forms. That is, it is in text form. It is not acting as a number.
That is where I'm going. You see, I am saying some of these things. That's why it is better to be in class and all of that. Because once you have anything in quotes, it's saying it's a string, irrespective of what is inside that. String can be denoted by quotes. Whatever is between that quote, it is seen. Either it is number, it is anything, it is symbol, it is seen as a string. So you see, that is tricky. To say dim K as a string. Now say K equals to, in quote, 4. So for somebody who just sees that 4 as a number, not seeing the quote, oh, the quote has made that 4 a string, it will say it's invalid. It will say this. But without the quote, you are just assigning a numeric value to a string, it will give you invalid or to give you an error. I am explaining some of this things so that you'll be able to see and then getting some of this. Okay. So let's move on. So let's look at the issue about assignment statement. Once you have chosen a name, reserve the location for a variable, you must give it a value. Now, this is it. And the values can be from any of these. Read in the value from a file, ask the users to enter the value, assign the value within the program. We've done this. So the only thing we have not is the issue of it can come from a file. So we've seen this syntax, we've used this syntax. We've used this syntax and be able to find what we have.
And I read papers by 2, sir. By 2, sorry. That's it. I want to tell again again.
So let's move on. So some of you should be conscious that you are in a class, because I open it so that we can all contribute Okay, so let's move on. So all of this we are through with them. Then this is just another way of creating what we call a statement. One, you can stack it by putting a color. Because one thing with VB is that it sees a program per line. Once you go to the second line, it's seeing it as another thing. That's why for people not to get confused, most programming language will tell you always have semicolon as end of line. VB allows you to write without putting a semicolon to end the line. You can leave it out. But once you move to the next line, VB is seeing it as another thing entirely. So what and what can you do so that if you are not through with an expression within a line, what do? You can use the underscore. Once it sees at the end of the last thing there's an underscore, you will see the next line as a continuation of what you were doing in the previous line. This is very, very key. Then we'll talk about one major thing, which is comment. Comment is for documentation. The program does not execute comment. Use comment for documentation, and then the documentation is just to describe what you are doing. So we've talked about data type. These are the various data type you need to look at. Data type is the attribute of variable or field that determine what kind of data it holds. This is a typical data type. So we have the Boolean, integer, and then we have the suffix. So in the early point of in the early stage of VB is more of the suffix that are used. So when somebody sees a percentage variable, it says that, oh, this is an integer. Once you see the ampersand, this is a long integer. But when the recent one comes, they are declared explicitly with the name of the data type. That's why I have the dim, the variable name, as either of any of these Boolean. When you say it's Boolean, what it means is true or false. Date, we know that. Currency, we know that. String, we know that. Variant and object are just saying, look, create anything and then let them take the form at runtime as they come up. So we've talked about this. Dim, dash, as data type, comma, variable. So you can declare them along the line. The variable name as the data. Explain this earlier on. So this is just a typical thing we have also looked at. Dim, interest as a single, then dim as a string. So we've talked about constant too. This is just in a nutshell, all of those things we have. Then you have declared those variables. You have placed them where you have assigned value to them. What now do you do? What now do you do to be able to manipulate, to be able to compare, to be able to do some kind of calculation on those variables? What you use is referred to as the basic operators. So what are the basic operators we have in VB? We have the arithmetic operators, relational operators, and the logical operators. For the arithmetic operators, which are normal mathematics, like from exponential, multiplication and division. We have the truncative, we have the mode, and we have the addition in this order. And then parenthesis gives you precedent because of BODMAS. So we still use the concept of BODMAS. So this is key. If I want to combine two strings together, I use the ampersand. I use the ampersand. So take note of all of this and how these are applicable. So all of these are what we use in our command. This is where what you use to write the code. This is what to combine. So if I want to look at two variable of two variable with integer values, and I want to try as much as possible to add them together, the name of that variable plus, and I want to store it somewhere else, I use the assignment statement. So for example, C equals to A plus B. A, I've given value, B, I've given value. Then it's easier to use an arithmetic operator to do the operation and then assign the value because of the equal back to another variable. So this is all what we have in terms of that, and then all the operators. So we have what? The relational operators, which is the comparison. I want to compare two locations, maybe is one greater than the other, and all of that. So I use the relational operator. So then the logical operators. I can also use a logical operator, which is what? The not and or. So both the relational and logical will be more useful when we talk about control structure. So this is inbuilt functions. These inbuilt functions are things that are built in that I want to use. Like I want to find the absolute value of a number. I'll just put A, BS, the number if you give in the absolute number. So these inbuilt functions are key things that are used to do certain things in VB. So this is another classwork, so which we will look at when we go into. So we have two classwork, the form without the command, and we'll create another form with command. So I think we will start with that next week. And then, okay. And Tony, let me just unmute so because I think this is the last thing we'll be doing. Let me just hold on. Okay, you can unmute yourself and ask your question now. Anthony. Okay. You can unmute now and ask. Unmute yourself.
Oh, good.
Anthony, you can unmute yourself. Your hands is off. Okay.
So,
all right.
So,
That's my question, sir. I don't know if you get me correct.
No. What's your question?
I said you just showed us an inbuilt function now.
Yes.
So I want to ask that how do we prompt these functions? Is it using the equal sign too?
Okay. All right. Now for inbuilt function, they are like we are not dealing with function because it's going to make all of these things elaborate and all of that. You will have understood the concept of inbuilt function. Now, if for example, I have a pattern, let me go back there so easier for me to explain. Okay, all right. So okay, so this is now, for example, let's take the first one. Now, I want to create an absolute value of a number. I have the number. All I will just do is that I will just put A, B, S and put that, and then put what's it called now? Open bracket and put the number there and close it. Automatically, it sees that as a function. Pick up that value and find the value of it and assign it to any variable you want to. So what this means is that the concept of function is that I don't want to go deep in saying that, okay, that number is a parameter. You send it to an inbuilt function written by the, if you concept, just put it so that inbuilt function is that the environment you are using. I've written some function for you. You don't need to rewrite them. Just create the parameter, put it, call the function, put it there. It does it for you and return the value. That is the best way I can explain. Now, for those who will now go deep and writing function, doing, oh, we now understand better. Okay, what is a parameter? Oh, this is it. So for inbuilt function, it's just that you call the function, put value there, and that's
Sir, please, can you give an example? Sir, can you give an example?
I
Example
just
of
give
a
it.
VS.
Wait, hold on. What I will do next week, just if you could come in, just type it, I will do that. I just give several examples because we are not dealing with function. I just brought in, if the concept of function will make you understand better. But I'll give you typical example of how it is and what will be the value. I'll do that next week. But it's because I'm not going deep into function, I just say, okay, we have inbuilt function, something that the environment have written for you and all of that. So we will call it a day. Thank you for listening. So we start with control structure next week. So okay, Esther, 10 o'clock, right? Esther?
Okay, sir. Sir, please, I want to ask that, are we going to get your slides or your recorded class just for
No,
us
I'm going
to
to send,
better
I'm going to
understand?
send, yes, I'm going to send something stand for you. And then you
Thank
can,
you, sir. You're going to send slide.
Sir, please,
you said?
Sir, please, can
It's
you hear me,
already,
sir?
hello, you can also view it also at the YouTube is there. I won't take it down for those who want the recording, it's there.
Yes, sir, please, you can send the YouTube link so that we can watch it
No,
again.
yes, I've sent it. If you are there earlier, I also sent it to governors and all of that. So with my name that you saw, you can just go there and you'll find it's there.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
For those who want to, okay, Toby.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Quickly ask your question because we are already done. So that I don't know.
Please, we need the slide. The slide for this.
Okay, no problem
He
about
said he's
slide.
going to send it.
No problem about slide. So get slide. All right. So Toby, is that your question?
There's an answer that which text editor are you going to use for Visual Studio Code?
I'll show you. I'll prefer a light one for you that you can use a VB6.
Okay, V what, sir?
VB6.
VB6.
Visual Basic 6. Or at the same time, you can use Visual Studio, any of the latest 2022. So either of them. Or VB6 is a bit like. All right. So okay. So we meet next week. Then please, I've said it earlier on, go get the manual. By now, you ought to have filled the previous one. Yes, after sir. This class or probably next class that we are done, you should be able to attend that manual and we'll give you a date to submit. I'm saying this so that people don't come up when you are giving deadline.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Is it all the questions in the manual? Every single thing?
Yes. That's why you ought to have gotten it and be filling it. Each class
sir,
has a code. Did you see that there's space for everything you have been doing? So you ought to have gotten it right from the onset and be filling.
Excuse me, sir. Good morning, sir.
All right.
Okay, sir. The week 7 to 9, the problem specification, the assessments, the topic analysis design. We to fill those ones too.
Yes, you have to. So I will go through. I get feeling. I'll go through BAF since we'll be ending the class next week. I'll just pick a typical way, maybe one of you to explain how that will look like. Because immediately after next week, the deadline for submission will be given.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So that's why I want to play a little bit of the practical, use the practical to explain, then talk a bit about control. Then I think I will be done. And then give issues about some other areas you need to read. And then we are good to go. Israel, because we are ready.
I'm sorry, sir. One more question.
Okay.
So you said we should print the answers on the page. Are we supposed to like print the questions and the answer and staple it to our manual?
Yes, you can staple if you find out that whatever you have done cannot, the code is more than what. You can just print and staple it. It's allowed.
So we are not allowed to use pen to write our answers.
No, if it can contain that place, you are free. You get the point. If you feel whatever you can put there, and that's why the spaces are there, and you can rule it, and it will be visible enough to put there. Why not? That's why the spaces are there. That's why it's a manual. That's why a manual was provided, so that all of this format, all of these things will not be there, so that people knows that have you informative in what you're doing, and you are reporting it, and you're submitting.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So please, you know why I'm appealing is because this is where we have issues of people, because that is the essence of the manual, not just something that you want to watch. As each class you have, so that when you are having any difficulty, you can ask, oh, I was having issues in this particular aspect, in this, oh, this is what it meant. It's like what we are doing now. Because if everybody have the manual and there are issues, okay, no, look at it from this, look at it from that. So for all class reps, all who have all over, maybe you are in any of those groups, you have people offering this course, please tell them. Everybody should get your manual. We are now looking at how to resolve the manual. There will be a deadline to submit so that we can see what you have done concerning the course itself. Then we can grade accordingly. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.